Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always, my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, it's preview time. It's Manchester United versus Aston Villa, fourth versus sixth. We thought we'd come at this after the Man U Spurs game just to give us a bit more clarity and see truly where Manchester United are at, because as of the time of recording, it's now Friday morning. So they play in 2 days and they've played away from home. You've got to factor in recovery and all that kind of stuff. So this is going to be a really interesting game. First of all, mate, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm very good, mate. I'm very good. I was very happy with the result last night. I felt like a draw was exactly what we needed. And I think even the manner in which it unfolded, United going out in front in 2-0 lead and then Spurs putting them back to ensure that this little wobble isn't the right word, I don't think. But, they haven't had a great few weeks, really, sort of going all the way back to the exact same situation in the Sevilla game, a 2-goal lead. They then conceded 2 goals to end up drawing that one. There was that win against Nottingham Forest 2-0 on the road, but they didn't particularly wow me in that game. And then obviously there's the total collapse at the, in the second leg at the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan. And then there's that semi-final again where they weren't very impressive. I think, as we sort of spoke about, if you're a Brighton fan in that game, I think you're the side that's coming out quite disappointed that they didn't go on and win that game. And then again yesterday, they've thrown another 2 goal lead away, so they're not in a great patch at the moment. And I think they've got some big games coming up. They've got ourselves, and then they go to Brighton after that. It's one where I genuinely think they'll probably be more worried about us than we are of them.
Definitely. Isn't that weird to say, going to Old Trafford and
Yes.
being the favourites, and we, in some form of way we're going to get absolutely shafted there. But I mean, the interesting thing, I don't want to trigger everyone's PTSD from a few weeks ago and talk about XG. Spurs were very good value for the goals that they scored. They were. It's a wonderful goal from Pedro Porro. Son Heung-min obviously has a chance that Kane puts on a plate absolutely wonderfully, more than 10 minutes before we probably got the equaliser. So, it does just go to show that United are, in a way, it's slightly asterisk there for the taking if you can create clear-cut chances. We know David De Gea isn't having the best of time right now, so the first thing you want to do is be aggressive on that press as soon as the centre-halves or the goalkeeper have the ball. And really put them under pressure, because we saw, everyone was lauding De Gea, weren't they, in the FA Cup semi-final, because he didn't pass out from the back and because he was constantly hoofing it. But if you're going to do that, there's a 50-50 chance you're relinquishing possession. So ultimately, whether he passes out from the back or goes long, if we can force him into making those kind of mistakes, it's going to suit Villa throughout the course of the 90, really.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's, it's becoming increasingly clear that that is the weak spot in this Man United team now, that Erik ten Hag has sort of had to relinquish what he'd like to do with the ball, which is never good as a manager. You need to really quite uncompromising generally in sort of your tactical beliefs and everything like that. And United just don't have the ability to do that right now. I think they've gone small at the back really with Luke Shaw, and I think Luke Shaw's ability on the ball does help them with that. But yeah, I think that's definitely, I think when Villa are sat watching the tape and going through the scouting report, that's going to be the weak link in this United team, is that when you condense the pitch and you make them play in their own 18-yard box, they don't like it.
They don't. And last night as well, mate, both of the goals come really from them sort of dropping off too far in their own box, and not really having the confidence to go and attack the ball, claim the ball, all that kind of stuff, which I find interesting, because I think the first time I'd really seen us sort of flood the box in a long time was Brentford away, when we were like really in need for a goal and we had midfield runners, and we probably had about 6 or 7 Villa players inside that box within the final sort of 8 minutes, just applying constant pressure. We've not really seen that, because generally it's a much more measured approach that Unai takes. But it's going to be interesting because I think if you can put pressure on them, I mean, the back four that played yesterday, you've got Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who is a player that I do like and I would actually like us to sign if it's possible. Was it Lindelof at centre half? But then
Yes, yeah.
Luke Shaw and then Diego Dallo left back. So that defence already is completely and utterly makeshift. And if you can, the real weak link for me in that is obviously Luke Shaw at centre half. I think with a better centre half than Victor Lindelof, he can almost get away with playing at centre half, probably more so in a 3 than in a 2. But you're going to want to put pressure there. So I think Ollie's going to have a fantastic time against that. He's going to absolutely love coming up against him. And I mean, you know, we was talking earlier before we came on, mate, about the attack, right? And how frightening it is that Sancho and Rashford are seemingly back on form, and Rashford has been out for a few weeks with an injury and recently come back and he scores. But I look at them and there is no true focal point. And I think teams that, you know, we've come up against in recent weeks, especially when you look at Fulham, the lack of presence they had up front, it actually suited us. But, you know, the one thing I would say is obviously Marcus Rashford on his day is just absolutely bloody brilliant, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only caveat is that, you know, obviously when you look at the goal scorers to see Rashford back amongst the goals, and it's almost like every time he starts, he scores. And it's, you know, injury hasn't hampered that. And so obviously that's definitely something to consider for Villa. Jadon Sancho is an interesting one because he scored and it's a very good goal and it's very Jadon Sancho, but how often do you see him? Normally these moments are quite fleeting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you normally see him go and get a goal and then there's never really a goal in the second game, a goal in the third game. Normally there's a bit of a wait now, and you know I've probably tempted the fate here, and we know what happens next. But that's, you know, that's generally been the case. I think that sort of front four of Anthony, Fernandes, Sancho, and Rashford is so fluid. It's very Eric Ten Hag, who's played with a lot of different number 9s throughout his time in management and has proved capable of making pretty much any profile striker work. If you look at the different types that he's worked with, you know, from Dusan Tadic to Sebastian Haller to now Marcus Rashford to Val Weghorst, 4 very different types of striker that he's all made work in their own right, really. And, you know, if you go back further than that, obviously Ajax has run to the semi-finals. They rotated in sort of, as you said, Dusan Tadic, and you then had Kasper Dolberg and Klaas-Jan Huntelaar, who again are 2 slightly different strikers, but in those 2 profiles. And Tadic, who sort of roamed in that false 9 position, to Dolberg, who's your more typical number 9, shows that he can work with anything really. And Rashford has typically played off the left at United, and we know that's been his preferred role, but such is the form that he's in at the moment that you sort of have to play him through the middle. So, I mean, that's the obvious sort of threat there, isn't it? And I like what sits behind him, Casemiro and Eriksen. And, you know, Eriksen's definitely a boost for United in that sense. And I think Fabitz has played well as well. But yeah, I really don't know what to read because United have been so patchy recently. And you sort of look at that, basically the defence onwards, and it's such a good team. It's such a good team. But so often are they let down by those behind them. And I think the one disadvantage that you have with playing someone like Luke Shaw at centre back is that if you sort of watch the second goal yesterday, Kane's coming through the midfield with the ball and Luke Shaw steps out to meet him, which leaves basically Dallo and Lindelof. Wan-Bissaka's pushed forward, so he's not even in the frame at this point. It's usually Dallo and Lindelof standing approximately 30 yards apart, and there's just a gaping hole because Luke Shaw stepped out. And that's what I think it's Kulusevski swings the ball into. Lindelof can't get to it and Son tucks it away. So I think whilst Luke Shaw is going to bring you some benefits in terms of how you play out with the ball, defensively, he's not got those centre half instincts, and that's the real weak point. Is because, okay, if you're not playing Luke Shaw, who's stepping in there? Obviously, I think Harry Maguire's picked up another injury. They didn't actually have another centre back on the bench yesterday. So there's a real weakness there. And as you say, I just look at Ollie and I think that he will enjoy playing against that back line. And if we can have those kind of midfield runners to disrupt that back line, and have people running off their shoulder and running in from deep positions. There's definitely something in that there. We've had a lot of luck at Old Trafford recently, which can only give them confidence.
Let's hope that run continues, man. Let's hope that run
Yeah.
continues. United have failed. Well, sorry, United haven't failed. So in none of their last 5 games have both teams scored, which I find quite interesting. So either United are going to score and win, or vice versa. So I look at the defense as well. And I'm just, even when it's sort of at its best, it's not been like remarkable, has it? I mean, you look at that back line that set up against Brentford at the start of the season and lost 4-0. And then there's a similar story against Brighton. So it feels so weird to say that I'm confident ahead of going to a match at Old Trafford, because we all know the amount of times we've been fiddled out of points and out of decisions in games like this. And I think it's the fact that Emery's already, he's been there, done it, got the T-shirt, beat United in his first game, did it pretty convincingly as well. Obviously, it was a spectacular Luka Dean free kick. JJ, it was one for the ages. It's weird, but with all of the results that we've had, mate, coming in 10 unbeaten and with the fantastic clean sheet record and all this kind of stuff, I'm gonna go with a 1-1 draw. I think that's where my head and my heart says. Obviously, you mentioned Bruno played. He had his foot in a recovery boot only 2 days ago. It seemed like a bit of a decoy, maybe, and it looked like he was going to be out for at least a week. Obviously, we've not had Unai's presser yet. That will be today, but I can tell you that all the injury updates are going to be the same, unless someone picked up a surprise injury in training. But the sort of 5 or 6 players that we have out at the moment, there will have been no progress since the Sunday presser. But yeah, I'm going to go 1-1, mate.
Yeah, I don't hate it, mate. I think, staying unbeaten in this run is the most important thing. And, I actually did a table predictor yesterday. Did the run into the results at the end of the season. And we finished on exactly the same record as Brighton. Literally same wins, same draws, same defeats. And obviously, because they've been more consistent throughout the season, they pipped us on goal difference. But I did have us draw in this game because we obviously lost one of our away games under Emery, which was at the Etihad, which, you didn't hate that. Yeah, we've had a good run against Man United recently. United have lost 2 of their last 3 games against the Villa, which is as many wins as we'd had in our previous 51 attempts, which is pretty nuts. However, United are unbeaten in their last 14 home games, which is the longest ongoing run in the division. So despite all of their blips, United have kept Old Trafford as a fortress. And it's for that reason, mate, that I think I'll go with a draw too. I think it will be quite low scoring, because I think for both teams it's more of a must not lose than a must win. I think United just need to make sure that they don't add another loss and keep this one going. And I think they'd probably take a draw, and I think we probably would as well. I think remaining unbeaten is the biggest thing. So yeah, I think a draw sounds good, mate.
Yeah, I'll take that, man. I'll absolutely take that. Will Emery get his first 0-0 draw in the Premier League?
I would take that. I would take that.
I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't. I'm sure he'd rather it be a 1-1, just so as he can keep his record of no 0-0 draws. But no, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think there's definitely a video in that table predictor. Maybe we do that next week sometime. But yeah, interesting one, guys. Obviously, the games, they feel like they're coming thick and fast. Each day is passing, and it just feels like we're getting even more hyped for what could be. So if you're not, you guys are going to want to make sure that you subscribe to us here at Heart of the Holte, so you never miss a Villa Filler podcast, because who better to spend your time with than listening to us? Also, I just wanted to give a shout out to, we had a DM on Instagram Let me just
Yes.
make
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm logged into the work account right now. That's not.
This is crazy.
So it's from an account called Forage and Fish, and they're listeners of the Villa Foot podcast. Well, as well, what a great account this is, by the way. I don't know if you've taken a look at it, mate, but it's like a foraging account, and this person is documenting their forages, and it's very aesthetically
Nice.
pleasing.
Very awesome.
Yeah, and they've reached out and on Instagram from all the way from Wellington, New Zealand. That's how far the Villa Filler goes, mate. And said some very kind
Crazy.
things about the podcast and about us. So thank you very much.
Yeah, man.
It's truly appreciated. And I was saying to Dan, it's mad how far, like, the reach of the podcast, like the fact that people are listening in New Zealand, and I know there's regular listeners in Malta and in Italy and in Brazil, and it's mad really that Villa has that sort of global reach, and we appreciate every single one of you for hopping on this journey with us. So yeah, if you aren't subscribed, make sure you do like, comment,
Yeah.
subscribe, and up the Villa.